a very interesting painting from the National Gallery of Canada. Actually, it's from the 18th century, early 18th century, because there's an inscription, and it states that it's from the Kangxi period, the Kangxi emperor, who was before the Qianlong. Then what we're looking at is we're looking at 5 different forms of Manjushri. In the center, we have an orange, upper left red, kind of a yellow in the upper right, green in the lower right, and blue in the lower left, riding a lion. Now, what's interesting about this painting is that it clearly states at the bottom that it was made for a group of travelers, pilgrims who came from the capital, which should mean Beijing, and they visited Wutai Shan mountain, the 5-terraced mountain famous for Manjushri, some distance from, but not so far, but some distance. In those days, it would have been a 2 or 3 a day travel from Beijing to arrive at this rather isolated area. And they did some pilgrimage, and then they have inscriptions for all 5 and more of these Manjushri. They have I think there's 8 inscriptions on the front of this painting, just documenting a little bit of where they went and which Manjushris are located on the 5 terraces. Sometimes it's called the 5-peaked mountain of Manjushri, but I believe they're actually terraces. If you go there, you'll find that they're quite rounded hills. There's no peaks to them at all. And on the rounded top of the portions of these terraced mountains, then there are temples and holy places and pilgrimage spots and sanctuaries, which dot the entire area of for scores of miles in all directions around this holy site. It's been a holy site, I think, from the 7th, 8th century, when it was founded by an empress who was exiled from her city and her husband, and she took all of her ladies and maidens in waiting with her, and I think there were 300 of them, and they all came here to Wutai Shan mountain, and they all cut their hair, and they all became nuns. And then a pagoda was made. It was built at the center in the valley, at the center of these 5 terraced mountains. And then later on, in the 13th century, then Chogyal Pagpa, the famous nephew of Sakyapandita, came along, and he went to Wutai Shan with the famous Nepalese artist and architect Anika, and what they did is they built a massive white stupa surrounding the already existing pagoda. And it is said that Chogyal Pagpa, the great Sakya patriarch and teacher of Kublai Khan, it's said that Chogyal Pagpa himself created bricks and mud and actually worked on building this stupa, which still stands today. I'm sure it's gone through a number of repairs over the centuries, because that was a long time ago, and I'm sure they've had a few earthquakes. But it's said that Aniko designed it and had it built, and Chogyal Pagpa funded it and approved of it, and was actually worked on the construction. So what we have is we have the 5-terraced mountain, and then there's a Manjushri on each of the terraces. And where does this concept come from? Because prior to this, we looked on this Manjushri kind of mountain as being more special for nuns. And we didn't have this concept, as far as I know, of 5 different Manjushris. We only had one Manjushri, who was also the Manjushri who lived there and was also responsible for creating Chinese astrology, which is practiced in a lot of the Tibetan and Himalayan and Nepalese parts of the world. So the story is how we came up with these 5 Manjushri is Chogyal Pagpa said that there's a different Manjushri on each of these terraces or peaks. And then that's where we get this tradition now of sort of combining different traditions of Manjushri from India, and then sort of just picking certain ones and making them the Manjushri for each of the plateaus or the terraces. I've not really seen a standardized set. It could be that Chankya Rilpe Dorje, the teacher to the Qianlong Emperor, he might have standardized on some system of what color, how many how many arms they have, and whether or not they ride on a lion or some other mount. It's possible that there are, but I don't think there's a universal standardization at this time. So the important thing here is a painting from the National Gallery of Canada. The inscriptions are written in two languages. They're written in Chinese and they're written in Manchurian. So obviously the pilgrims here are likely to be Manchurian. So they're Manzu or Manchus and part of the government structure of the imperial palace, possibly even. But they're the ruling class of China in the 18th century under the imperial system. And so that's what makes this painting more interesting, is because of the inscriptions and the dating of it. So we'll leave it there. You can press like, you can subscribe, you can join HAR on Patreon and have access to a certain number of additional videos and essays, or you can become a patron for as little as $3 a month and have much more access to over 120 videos. And you can also make a donation on the homepage of Himalayan Art Resources.